What's up, guys? My name is Christian Rodriguez. I'm the founder and director of False 8, and today on episode 1, I'm here with Sydney. We're going to be talking about many things youth soccer, and so we're super excited to kind of give you guys an all access into the normal conversations that many of the coaches have at False 8. You know, youth development is something super serious to us, but something we really enjoy. It's a passion, so I'm super excited to get you guys into this convo. Sydney, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited. Just as one of the trainers at Fall State, I think it's going to be great just to have kind of an inside look of, like you said, the conversations that we usually
Yeah.
have and, yeah, are used to having. Just get an inside look.
Yeah, that's exciting. So for those that don't know, I always say this, but Sydney is from the Springfield, Virginia area. She has played D1. She played for the University of Maryland, played for Indiana, and was able to play in Champions League, played in Europe. And so she's got a really good career and a good resume. And so I think just having her around all the kids is such a great experience for the kids and for us as well as coaches because we can learn because I retired 4 years ago, but she's fresh out of the game. So what would you say as a player that has played at that level, coming from like the DMV area, what do you think was I would say, one of the motivation factors of going pro? Like, what was your main motivation in going pro or pursuing this dream?
I would say for me, I think I have kind of, I don't know. For me, I love the game. And I think from a young age, that's when that started. And that, fortunately for me, it's not everybody
Yeah.
can say that they keep their love for the game through every level from the youth days to the high school and club and all that to the college days and two different universities and then two different professional clubs. So I
Ooh.
think having the love for the game really motivated me the most. And then also just setting that dream from when I was a kiddo,
Yeah.
young, super young. My friend and I, my best friend
Yeah.
growing up, we kind of shared a similar dream together of playing professionally. So I think that definitely kept me a little bit more, you kind of have that in the back of your head of like, can I do it? Like these steps are that I'm taking are kind of leading me towards it.
Yeah.
Although I will say, technically, I didn't reach the dream, but having that as a motivating factor, and she retired a little bit early,
Yeah.
after college and or in college, and so kind of carrying that with me, I feel
Yeah.
like um, was definitely a motivating factor.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So we have a lot of soccer parents that are watching this, and maybe some like youth players as well. What made the dream like for you? What made it like tangible? Did you ever have like a moment where it was like, this is what I want? Not just like, yeah, I want to go pro. Like at training, we always ask, like, who wants to go pro? Everyone raises their hand. But what made the dream like tangible? Like, this is something that I want. This is like a fire in my belly that I gotta quench it and I gotta find a way to make it. Did you have a moment like that?
I think there were a couple different moments like throughout my like youth days.
Yeah.
I think um and I think that's important too cuz that we can talk about that another day, but like that kind of goes to goal setting.
Mm,
So having those like little goals throughout that are going to kind of propel you each time you succeed or like achieve it. So for me, I would say um just anytime you feel like you're leveling up, I think is one where you're either um, going to an ID camp and getting feedback or getting feedback from college coaches at Showcase
yeah.
or um, calling a coach or if we're talking about getting recruited for
Yeah.
college. And then choosing a college that you feel like if college is your route,
Yeah.
choosing a college that you feel like is going to help you with your dreams. So for me, once I got to Maryland, having those conversations with some of the assistant coaches, especially for this is my goal, this is my dream, do you think it's tangible? So you kind of need somebody to believe in you as well. Um, Faith in yourself is great, but I think in that support system, you need somebody who's also going to believe in you. So having a conversation of is it tangible, them saying yes is a huge
Yeah.
thing, because it's like affirmative. And then I would say one of the things right before college that solidified like me kind of knowing that that's where I wanted to go was I actually went to the Gothia Cup
Ooh.
in Sweden, and that was right after my senior year of high school. So I was already committed to Maryland already. That was kind of set in stone. But then the summer before my freshman year of college, I went to the tournament in Gothenburg, Sweden,
It's a
and
big tournament.
we stayed in Denmark for like a week beforehand, and then we stayed at Fortuna Hjørring, which is a club there in the first division Denmark.
Jeez.
And that experience there, I was like, this feels like something that is not that far away from me.
Let's
And I
go.
think that was like a hugely motivating factor. Is just I had always thought I wanted to play in Europe. Um, but then after that, I would say I knew I wanted to play in Europe.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So,
That's incredible because
yeah.
again, it's those and your career, the direction that your career took, you can really see that that was actually like a pivotal point going to the cup in the Gotham Cup and seeing all that. Because then after college, you went straight to Europe. So many girls try to make it maybe in the U.S. or stick around. You're like, nope. Like you had a Euro mind, and that's why I feel like these experiences, those tangible moments, those aha moments, like I think you going over there to Europe and kind of I don't know, like I feel like you connected with the soccer culture and that took your career in that direction. What do you feel like? Would you there's this big like controversial like question. Would you recommend like players that want to go pro, especially the girls, would you say go for it in the NWSL or would you say go to Europe or is that just like personal preference?
I think it depends on. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it depends on the player,
Yeah.
that like each individual player. The NWSL, the game in the States now is different from 10 years ago
Yeah.
when I was in high school going to um, NWSL games, and the Washington Freedom
Yeah.
was playing at the like in
Maryland. Yeah,
Bethesda,
the
the
Maryland
soccerplex.
Soccerplex. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's night and day from the Washington Spirit playing in Audi and selling out
Selling
Audi.
out.
So it's just there's a different look that kids have where they
Yeah.
can feel, that inspired. Like I was inspired to play at the soccerplex, but then the next weekend we have a tournament in Bethesda and you're playing at the
At the
soccerplex.
Soccerplex.
So we didn't have necessarily that like big pinnacle of this is what I want to play and sold out stadiums like the girls thankfully
Now. Yeah.
that they have now. So I would say NWSL also being one of the top 2 leagues in the world
That's big.
is huge to have in the States for the girls to look up to. Um, and I would also say that's a great way to a great league to shoot for.
Yeah.
I think it also depends on your style of play, your fitness, what you're looking to get out of the game. If you're using the NWSL to then maybe play in, England, or you're trying to play for Man City or
Yeah.
Barcelona, I think the NWSL is a great goal because I think that's a great stepping stone. But it's not realistic for everybody.
That's
And
true.
I think that's a huge part, is kind of looking at who you are as a player, how you are as a player, how you fit into tactics, what positions you want to play, because there are a lot of sacrifices positionally
Oof.
that you're going to have to make. And again, we can get
Yeah.
into that later
Yeah.
too, where you have to be adaptable. But for maybe kids who are either super Europe minded
Yeah.
or aren't going to the UCLAs and the Stanfords, that maybe they have a less likelihood of getting drafted. Maybe I think Europe would be a great place to start because there are so many leagues. Now, not all of them are going to be professional, and you're going to have a lot of
Mm,
universities who are a lot more professional
yeah.
than the women's professional game in Europe. That's just, you can ask pretty much
Yeah.
anybody. Anybody who has played in, I would say, like lower than a top 4 European league will tell you, will be able to compare the university system in the US and how professional it is compared to the professional game in Europe. And that is just speaks to how far the women's game has to go. But yeah, I would just say, like, look at who, really take a look at what you want out of the
Yeah.
game and what you want the game to give to you, what you're willing to give to the game, what you
Mm.
want it to give back to you, and then that should give a better idea of where to play and where to set your goals to play. Because there are a lot of professional opportunities that aren't in the NWSL, and I think that's important to note too. Just because you don't make it maybe to the NWSL doesn't mean you can't play professionally.
That is a
Yeah.
big one because I know a lot of youth parents, they think, well, it's either NWSL or my kid is not going to play. But like, there's a game, there's a world outside of the NWSL, and it's very attainable. And the same thing goes for the boys as well. It's not just MLS. I mean, if you have dual citizenship, you can go play in the homeland of your parents. You can do a lot of things to stay in the game. And I think one of the points that I think that you made that I was really like caught by was you have to know what type of player you are and what type of systems you will fit into. And I would say again, right now from the U9 to the U13, 14 phase that we work with players in that age bracket, I would say we can't truly see what style they are yet. But once you become maybe U15, U16, would you say that's the age where you start to see, will they be more of a Euro based, or do you think like it's after college that or during college that you start to see that style of play question being answered?
I would say, I mean, for me personally, I had coaches that would say when I was probably like 12, just like in the beginning of the teenage years,
Mm,
would say that I played more of a European possession based
right.
style.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's hard to tell. I think your game towards the end of high school is a good indicator
Yeah.
of kind of how you'll be as a player. You know, you always say
Yeah.
that you're like building your identity as a player while you're young.
Yeah.
Um, so I think coming from you, I feel like that makes sense.
Yeah.
As a good indicator of like kind of where they'll go, but it also depends too on your experience. If you're going to university, it depends on your experience because some players are 17, 18 going to university into a new system. We can talk all about university coaches some other day, but
Yeah.
I can't get into that right now.
Canceled.
Yeah.
We'll get canceled. We'll get super canceled right now.
Nah, nah, but that's just a lot of takes on that I think are kind of common maybe experiences from players who go play in college. But I kind of have a question for you since you
Yeah.
went, like, some kids are going, like, I went from around 18
Yeah.
into college, but by the time you were 18, you were already playing in Europe.
Yeah.
So how how would you say that impacted your game going from the youth
In the US.
academies
Yeah.
here in the US to the youth academies in Europe? And what would you say to players who are young teenagers looking to go maybe to an abroad academy versus staying here in either the MLS Next or what have
Yeah.
you league, going into like the domestic
Yeah.
leagues
No,
here?
that's a great question. I'd say like one of the things I think we've talking about it before, and it's like we obviously Europe is great if you have European citizenship, if you have a good setup, if there's a plan, if the club rates you, it's not just coming in through the back door just to say that you play in Europe. It's, are you at a first division or a second division club that's going to actually give you the pathway to actually fight to go pro, or is it just the Instagram flex? So for me, when I went to Groningen, I went on the context of one of the assistant coaches of the U17s who was also working with the first team. He was like, look, he told the agent that brought me over, he was like, look, I think in 3 years you'll be first team ready if you stay. They were trying to convince me. If they weren't trying to convince me to stay, then I probably would have stayed at DC Academy and just probably tried to play in college or try to get into an MLS, pro system. And so for me, I think it was really good for my development because I went to the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is like a good developmental, like they're good with young talents. But if I were to go maybe to Eastern Europe and try to break into a first team system, yeah, it may have gone well, but at the same time, there's so much more than soccer that would have affected me. So I think everybody has a unique situation. And for me, thankfully, it was the Netherlands, right? Before I went to the Netherlands, I had an option to go to two or three other countries that maybe it would have gone better for me, but I probably would have suffered more. So it's like, are you willing to suffer? Are you will it does it make sense for you? So I think there's many pathways, but if you have European citizenship, I'd say utilize that, leverage that. But if not, I think it's kind of like staying home sometimes is like, I think is underrated. Everyone's always like, go chase the dream, go for it, go to Europe, but it has to make sense. And you have to kind of carry your weight in the game and kind of have like, you can't just be that, like everybody wants to be that, goal, the dream begins, like the movie star where you go out into Europe and you chase it and they make it like this epic pursuit or chase, but it's not really that. As you know, it's a lot of suffering, it's a lot of psychological things that you have to go through going abroad. And again, it has to make soccer sense. They have to rate you. It's not just, did I make the team? It's, can I actually see myself going pro? So if that's not the case, then it's hard. It takes discipline, but you've got to be honest with yourself and be like, you know what? Let me try to make it here in America because the opportunities are getting better. So for me, I think going to Europe also puts you under a lot of pressure really early. So you have to be at a certain level really early, really fast. And maybe you're not fully developed yet. And so you're coming to that final exam that we always talk about in soccer. We believe there's always a final exam. That final exam for me was at 16, 17. And it's like, OMG, like, this is too much. Like, I remember there was a game where one of my coaches said the not just the youth director, but the technical director of the whole club is going to come and watch this game to see if you're worth signing a $200,000 contract at 16 years old. You have a spot on the academy, but he's going to see if we're going to sign you. Like, and so that game I played with my legs trembling. I played well, but I was trembling. That's a lot of pressure. And sometimes it's like people are like, if you can't take the heat, don't play the game. And the truth is, well, being that young, maybe if I would have had to taken that level of heat in maybe 2 years, maybe I would have been able to handle that pressure. But I was very underdeveloped psychologically, so it was difficult. So I think there's a lot of pros and cons, and that's where we go into youth development, right? Like I think the culture now in youth development is we all these kids see the dream. They have access to the NWSL where you go to the Washington Spirit game at Audi and it's sold out. In the men's game, you have all the international teams coming here. You see the Barca's coming for preseason. The MLS is getting better. We have Messi, and now we think, oh, like the dream is actually attainable, and it is attainable. But I think we're running into this issue now that we're like me and you, we and a bunch of the coaches, we work in the youth development world, and we see a lot of things that maybe parents don't see, maybe youth players don't see, and we're starting to see one of the biggest things that are going to hurt these talented youth players going pro is the culture that is cultivated around this modern day age in the US. You are coming off of being a pro and you've been in it, you felt it. I've been 4 years out of it, but you're fresh out of the pro game. Was it a shock when you came into like the falsate like atmosphere and you're seeing like the culture of youth soccer, and then I know a lot of the coaches were filling you in, and has the culture changed, and did it shock you in any way?
I don't know if I would say, I think the culture has changed. I think, I don't know if I'm Gen Z or if I'm young millennial. I don't know what I am, but it feels like social media has had a huge, huge impact on the culture. Um, and I don't know yet how that is affecting the kids themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's something I'm still learning, just getting fresh into it. I feel like growing up, we had, let's see, like when I was around their age, I think that's when Instagram came out,
Yeah.
pretty much. And so I know like occasionally we would post about like being at the field, you know. Um, but it wasn't as much about highlights or um, here's my game, you know. It was
Yeah.
more just like at the field for the love of the game. Ball is life,
Yes.
you
Ball is
know,
life was a
like
hashtag.
all that stuff was like very much still like because we were obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And me and the friend that I was talking about who would
Yeah.
always go to the field, like that was kind of like our motivation was like it was very much teaching ourselves because we didn't have a false eight, you know, when we were young. So shout out
Right.
Christian for false eight. Um but we kind of had to do our own false eight or like
Yeah.
my mom when she was coaching us when we were 10 would bring in kind of that like
Those
foot
foot
skills
skill trainers.
specialist
Yeah.
trainer to teach us, and then we would then take that and go to the field together and come up with all sorts of moves similar to your ball mastery pretty
Yeah.
much. Um and so that was like our big motivating factor was like each other, and that like it's like I was intrinsically motivated because of my love for the game. So was she, and both of us used those that motivation to have kind of that not rivalry, but like turn it into
Yeah.
so much fun with each other where like we would literally have in-game competitions of who could get the most megs, or we would plan ahead and be like, well, how many goals are you going to score? How many goals am I going to score? How many times are you going to assist me? How many times am I going to assist you throughout the game? And like I think that was a lot of our motivation was coming from like that performance rather than really any other kind of influence
Voices.
yeah from that. And of course you can hear like we could hear our parents and talking on the sideline or like the post game
Oh
for
yeah.
another day, you
That's for
know,
another
for
day.
another day, but like the post game chats in the car and stuff like that, the evaluations on how
Everyone
everyone
played.
did, how everybody played. But yeah, it seems like and just entering a few months ago, from the
Yeah.
winter, now
From the
it's
winter, honestly.
beginning of summer. Just now entering into kind of like that youth world. All I'm seeing, I kind of see like a this or that.
Yeah.
Like is it because is it this where they're getting motivated watching other kids, or is it that where they're getting motivated because you can see how much they love the game and you can see that they're going outside. Like I just had a conversation last night at training with one of the parents and um about their kiddo because they can you can tell when
Yeah.
that this kid loves the game just in the way that he comes to false eight.
Yeah.
You know, you can tell. And I had that conversation with her, and I was saying um, that you can tell that this kid wants to be there, loves to be there, and their parents said, "Yeah, my kid loves the game. Like they're obsessed with it."
So
And
good.
I think that was almost refreshing because it kind of took me back to
The pure days.
yeah, like our childhood
Yeah.
days where you're going outside because you're obsessed with it, and because you feel better when you touch the ball, and you know you're getting better when you touch the ball. So it's kind of finding that, um, it's looking for it, and it's kind of refreshing when you see it because you can kind of see it in the players who love the
Absolutely.
game. So I think it's a little bit of both
Yeah.
maybe, and just because maybe they're not the same as this one kid doesn't mean that they don't love it. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they
Or
aren't
less of a player.
trying
Yeah.
their best and trying their hardest and showing up. But it's finding that balance of they're showing up, they're working hard, and hopefully the
Mm.
hope is that when they come to, could be false eight, could be
Anything. Yeah.
any training, or
Yeah.
whenever they touch the ball, that they're doing it because they have some love for it,
Yeah.
and some drive and some motivation that's coming from the
Within.
internal, yeah, that's an internal force rather than anything that's
Yeah. From the outside.
otherwise. And I think that's super important. So
It's a tough one.
yeah,
It's
it's
a
a tough
very
one.
tough. I think it's a very tough. Uh, I would say time to grow up in because obviously the pure love for the game, like you said. I think I see a lot of players that have it, but I see a lot of players that equally don't. And as a player or a former player or players, we still feel like players even though we're not playing, right? Um, we can read when someone loves the game and when someone doesn't, and we can see when it burns on the inside or when it's just because my parents are making me.
Or
And
you're looking left
or
and
you're looking
right.
all right,
Yeah.
there's a lot of comparison, and so it's not per se. And a lot of these kids that do it for parents, people are like, "No, my son loves it or my daughter loves it." You can still do it for your parents and be very good at it. And I think that's what parents don't understand. It's like there are indicators that indicate whether your kid loves it or not, and it's not always performance based. You could be the best player on your team and you have that insecurity from within that, maybe if I don't perform or I don't do this, my mom or dad will be upset at me because they're already investing so much money. And obviously youth development, you're traveling and you're doing all of this, and many kids don't want to lose their sense of community, their sense of identity. And so it's a little difficult. And I think one of the biggest, I think, issues right now is we live in a different age where players are going pro much younger, and there's so much more opportunity. We have NIL deals. Like you can be 12, 13 years old and you can sign a $500,000 contract with the brand, and you start off and you start off really early. And so one of the things with False 8, we're, a lot of we're social media. Like we do a lot of social media. We're on social media. It's not just the social media, but a lot of parents would say, or a lot of people would say, well, the social media age is the problem, but you guys say social medias all the time. So what's that all about? And so for me, I've heard that one a lot, and like we've talked about it before, and it's like, well, I'd say this: the kids need to make sure their motivation is not social media. But for me, as a coordinator or a head of a program, I understand the realities now that kids are turning pro at a much younger age. I understand the reality that they need the exposure now, and it can't be for the social media. Leave the social media to people like me, to the grown-ups, because now it's like kids need to be, unfortunately, they need to be in a way almost a brand and at a very young age. And I think that's kind of the issue where it's like it is a little toxic in a way where it's like if you're a 13-year-old promising player, you got to start branding yourself in a way that is going to help direct you, because there's a lot of networking that goes into the game now. As players that networking got them into places
Oh yeah.
that their talent wouldn't get them into if they didn't have the networking and the marketing backing. And so,
And you can see the other side of that
and you see
too.
the other
Yeah.
side. And so it's scary. It's very scary. And it's kind of like the grand issue right now where it's like, okay, we have to make sure we're bringing that exposure to the players and kind of, helping them position themselves to brand themselves in a good way, but also make sure that they remain pure to the love of the game. And so I think that's one of the most difficult things right now. How do we manage that? And then what that does too is it creates within the parents, from what we've noticed, nationwide, not just in the DMV, is because of social media, it creates a lot of comparison because you're only seeing the highlights. You're not seeing the bad days. And so, would you say you can sense that there's a lot of comparison going on in the culture of youth development now?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think there's comparison. I think there's a balance between
Yeah.
comparison, like comparison can be very motivating,
Yeah.
when it comes to even competing within the team of um I'm going to score 3 goals because you scored 4. Now I'm going to score 5 because you scored 4. You're
Yeah.
kind of constantly competing, and that can be super healthy. It just depends on, that parents just letting kids be kids at the
Yeah.
same time, and I think while kids are maybe a little bit too young for social media,
Yeah.
like having the parents handle that
Yeah.
and letting like people like you help kind of
Yeah.
get exposure for their kids. I think that kind of fits into it too.
Yeah.
As you said, I think I think it's super easy to get trapped into it and
Big
kind
time.
of get trapped into the comparison, where, you know, to some extent, just focusing on learning how to work hard and those principles of what makes a good player, resilience and being confident and or acting confident when you don't feel so confident, figuring out, okay, what's going to be the thing. For me, it was when I was nervous for a tournament or a game, I would go to the field.
Mm.
And that would make me feel confident because I would feel more prepared for the tournament, the game, what have you. So it's kind of sometimes focusing on the things that you can control, versus focusing on the things that maybe somebody else is doing. You can only control like yourself or like your family unit to an
Yeah.
extent. So sometimes it's focusing on that and what you can control in terms of working hard and teaching those properties and principles that are going to carry them not just through the youth game. That's fine. Like if
Yeah.
you're U13, U12, U9, U10, any of that, like those skills and traits and whatnot are so important,
Right.
but they're gonna be so much more important when things start to get really hard and they're in control of their social media and they're in control of whether or not they're going to the field for extra hours in college
Yeah.
or how they're handling that. It's giving them a lot of times the skills to be able to handle that and teaching them how to handle the comparison and
Mm.
teaching them how to deal with the stuff that like you said, unfortunately, this generation has to deal with that a ton
Yeah,
of
we didn't
things
have to
that
do
we
that.
didn't have to. So it's giving them kind of the tools and the skills and teaching them and preparing them and equipping them with the skills that are going to be super beneficial to bring them through as they level up. They're going to eventually, like the whole goal we talked about the other
Yeah.
day, the whole goal is leveling up.
Yeah.
And so it's preparing them, yes, for whatever trials and tribulations they're going through at 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
And as they do, you're only as old as you are. Like
Yeah. Honestly.
you're 10, but you have 10-year-old problems.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that if you're 14, you're not going through as much as, somebody who's 18 is, but you have different problems.
Yeah.
And
Honestly.
so it's figuring out and learning those skills when you're 11, 12, 13, 14 that will help you with your problems there that you can carry on when you're 18 in the pros, in college, going through having more on your plate, not having your parents around to help you out. And I think that's like a super important thing, especially when dealing with the comparison these days, is just learning how to do
How
it.
to deal and how to
Yeah.
do it. That's a big point, and that's going into what we believe in is youth development and kind of our place at Fall State and as trainers or like leaders in their lives. It's like, how can we help prepare them for the realities of this age, which there's a lot of comparison. There's a lot of, obviously, they're going to have to deal with the landscape of players and with connections, networks. Like, how do you bounce, even if, you may not know the person you need to know? Like, how can you stay relevant, active, effective in the crazy drama that is youth soccer that comes with so much injustice, like we say, so much ups and downs, but it's our job to kind of prepare them because again the realities are very scary. Like you played at a very high level, I played at a very high level, and there are things that we can't even repeat on this camera that happen that would break most youth players if they don't have the fundamentals. And I would say we grew up, like you said, in a era where it was soccer was very pure, so we had a very pure good, like yeah, pure, but like there was still drama, but it was better than it is today. And I feel if it was better than it is today, and when we got to the pro level, we experienced things that were like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm hearing this, or I can't believe this happened to me, or I can't believe I saw this. And then I think, how much worse is it going to be for the kids when they grow up and they see the realities? Because there's more NIL deals coming. There's more. It's not just Lamine. It's going to be a lot of 15, 16, 17-year-olds, 14-year-olds going pro. There's a lot of brand deals coming. Like it's the women's game as well is going to there's more money that's going to get pumped into it. So I think in this, and there's more opportunities coming too. So in this talented generation that we get to work with, it's like, oh, we have to be super intentional about preparing high level athletes, not just youth soccer players anymore, right? It's just like, yeah, if you have a good youth upbringing, like you want to instill the good principles, obviously, you want them to have a good, wholesome, experience. But now it's like, okay, like there's so much talent and there's so much opportunity. It's like, okay, we're not just preparing good youth soccer players, we're preparing future pros, future college athletes, and future potentially, I don't like to exaggerate, but potential millionaires in the game of soccer because it's like
Hopefully.
there's so hopefully right because there's so much money that's going to get pumped into the game. And so it's like and as you know, you've seen the cases. If you don't have a good youth preparation, mentality wise, support system wise, obviously fundamentally in the technical, tactical, physical side, then you are going to burn at those levels, and the fall is going to be really hard. So we have this big responsibility, and that's why, again, we haven't spoken much about it, but we're really going to go deep into the mentality side. And that's something, if you guys don't know, we're going to bring Sydney on board to be like the head of mental performance because she has a background in that. And so, how important do you think that mental preparation is from your perspective?
I think like I kind of had mentioned a little bit before is that um the early I think for me the earlier you learn these mental skills of how to build your self-confidence and different tips and tricks and tools um for yeah, your everyday, but your game day, your tournaments and that preparation, even the mental prep before practice,
Big
like
time.
those are all big things that I think can help the younger you learn them. It's like foot skills. Like
Yeah,
if you think about it, I like to say finishing is a skill. Like we have
absolutely.
finishing clinics, but you don't just hit bangers and
Yeah,
learn how to finish overnight. Like that's a skill. The foot skills are a skill. And just as you can have these skills with your feet and learn the game and have tactical skills as well, you can have mental skills too. And the earlier that you kind of learn those, for example, even before I was taking university classes and what have you in the sports psych areas. Um, when I was in the youth game, my mom taught me how to visualize and
mm,
she taught me imagery. And so that pre-game car ride on the way to tournaments, I was sitting in the car with my eyes open, my eyes closed, visualizing myself being successful in whether it was one of the moves my friend and I practice,
Yeah.
at the field, whether I wanted to do a step over a roll, scissor cut,
Yeah.
um, visualizing myself doing that successfully, or um, slipping the ball, scoring on the ground, far post. It's having those tools such as imagery, visualization, those types of things in your back pocket that you can use from when you're in your youth days to for your whole career. And those are so important. And there's so many more, and we'll get
Yeah,
into
we'll get
them.
into
We'll get into them, but there's just so many tools and skills that I think will benefit the kiddos the earlier they learn them, because then eventually when they get to the hard stuff and they need to be resilient, whether they're in Europe, not with their away from their family, listening to getting yelled at by their coach in a different
different
language. You
language.
know what you know how
Yo,
it
the
is.
tempo
You
is
know what I
different.
mean? Like, but um in those moments of resilience, you're gonna kind of lean on the skills that you've already learned. So hopefully, these kids will be able to lean on the skills that they've been practicing over the years and gotten good at. And then it will just make it so much easier for them to learn how to deal and cope with whatever challenges are gonna come their way. And that's gonna help them not only on the soccer field, um, but in life, hopefully, as well. Because,
It's important.
there's stuff that happens on the field and in the locker room and whatnot that
You
you
can't take
can't
home. Yeah,
prepare
you can.
for
Yeah,
and you can't take home. But there's things that happen at home or
that you can't
off
take
the
to the field.
field that these skills are gonna are gonna be beneficial for. So
That's
hopefully, yeah, that's
clutch.
our hope. So give them, the foot skills and the skills of the game that they need, but also the skills on the mental side of the game that are hopefully going to benefit them as well throughout as they go throughout their career and whatever levels they end up playing on.
That's big. That's very huge because, as you know, and we've spoken about it before, there are things that these kids will go through. Mom and dad, you love your kids, but if they're a high level athlete, you will go through things. And I'm sure you can attest, there are things that you've gone through as a pro. Had you not had the mental training and the preparation, your parents invested in sports psychology for you, right? And in the younger
Definitely at
ages,
the college
at the
level.
college level, and your mom was a positive voice and was very intentional about preparing you mentally, and that helped you. But if there are some things that could have legitimately broken you and really affected you as a human that you've gone through in your career had you not had that mental pillar and fundamental like teachings, right? Would you
I
say so?
I would say that, and I will say it wasn't until I got to the university level at the University of Maryland. Shout out Michelle Garvin, she's a goat. But she was she started the sports psychology department for the student athletes at
Wow.
Maryland. And she's an incredible sports psychologist, and luckily, fortunately, when you get to that level, if you're going to college, um, a lot like nowadays, sports psychs are a lot more accessible. And she was a resource that we were able to use at the University of Maryland. And learning, I learned a lot from her in my college days that I would have benefited from had I known them in the youth days.
Mm,
And so I think that's important. And while I'm super grateful that, and it was super necessary, I think that she was there to help my game. Um, I think carrying those skills and tips and tricks that I learned through college, then to Indiana.
mm.
So having those experiences build on one another, having her with me through Maryland and then transferring to Indiana, and utilizing the things that she taught me there, and then being able to carry that on helped. a ton. I do wish, and I think it would have been helpful to have that, um, even just even just mentorship,
Yeah.
um, in the youth days where I could kind of have those skills and be able to practice them in the youth days so that by the time I got to my freshman year of college, when I'm playing a position that I hadn't played since I was 10 pretty much, and am having a different college experience than maybe some of the other freshmen on my team. Just a lot of different things that will affect you your freshman year of college. I think there are things that I would have benefited from learning before
Mm.
arriving at the university level, that I ended up learning in the university.
It's key to start early, and that's kind of our whole thing. It's preparing because no one expects, like back in the days, no one expected their kid to go to the highest levels to play at these D1 schools. Like you just don't expect it. You didn't know it. And so it's like now it's like, okay, there's more opportunities. You expect it. Like now it is expected. Now you're basically breeding a child to do that. And whether that's right or wrong, we'll see at the end. But I mean, every superstar is sort of breeded to be a pro in a way. And so it's a tough reality. But I know players and they're mutual friends that we have, and there's people that we know and within the DMV that they don't know how to cope with their career. And so they unfortunately turn to substances, they turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms that are very harmful for them. And again, these are all they are the same kids. They remind me the kids that we train are the same kids that we know right now might be playing pro that may be suffering with some really crazy stuff. But because they don't know how to cope with the realities of the next level, with the realities of the demands, because it's a demand, like it is a demand. It is something so insane to play at that level. And you've got to be prepared for it. Or else, I'm not trying to be like fear based, but it can get really ugly. And people, humans can find very, if you're not well trained, well educated, or even if you are well educated, you just need the mental side because you could potentially turn to things that you don't need to turn or get distracted or waste your career. So there's definitely a lot, and we'll definitely go into that. As you know, the game, it can really bring a lot of hardships. And so we've seen players that we grew up with turn to substances, turn to things that are dangerous. So preparation is key. And I think this is why what we're trying to do, it's not just the technical work, it's not just the tactical work, it's not just the position specific, the game IQ, it's preparing a player to go pro, preparing a player for the realities of what is to come. And so it's so important the mental side of the game, and it's super important to be educated mentally. I'm gonna kind of change gears. What would you say, on a lighter note, what would you say helped you in the pro game remain level headed and kind of not be strayed or swayed by the ups and downs of the career? What kept you grounded?
I think the biggest thing for me is honestly having a center of gratitude.
Mm,
So I think through the journey, because it's not just when you're 10, when you're 12, when you're 14, like all those years are adding up to be your career, to be your life journey, your soccer journey, your football journey. And so for me, it is definitely has been, um, just having a center of gratitude where you kind of wake up, at least for me, when I was living in Budapest, again, even just saying that is like, I got to wake up in Budapest and go to training every day. And just having that awareness and that mindfulness of, I think mindfulness is another really really good tool. But having the awareness of I get to do this, that mindset of I get to, and we've talked about
yeah,
that somewhat recently, is um a huge one. I think that will carry you
big.
pretty far, is that I I get to do this. Anytime you're kind of maybe thinking one way of I have to, or I don't want to,
That's
which
bad.
happens some days. You have days where you're like, I don't want to.
Mm-mm.
And just that reframing another tool, is that reframing that mindset of, do I have to or do I get to?
Mm.
Do I have to go to practice? I mean, technically, yeah, it's in my contract.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, you get to have a contract if you get there. You get to have a contract. You get to have it where you have to go to training. You get to go to training every day because it's in your contract.
That's
You get to um meet new people. You get to learn a new language. You get to all of these different things that come with the game. Um, Especially in the professional world, maybe it can be a little bit easier, maybe, when you are a professional to say I get to do this
right.
because you get the paycheck,
Right.
and that sometimes changes things. But I think for me, it was mostly about loving the game. I get to get paid for getting
For
for
playing.
playing, for doing what I love to do. And I think those um we're talking about mostly in the professional and the college world, but um that can be carried down into the youths too, into the youth
Big time.
ages. Is,
Big time.
oh, I get to go to the field, I get to play soccer with my friends. I get to practice my ball mastery at home
I get
because
to
my parents
dream. I
bought it
get the
for me,
privilege to dream even. Like I get to work
Yeah.
towards this goal.
Yeah. And so I think just viewing it as more of a privilege instead of, a task
Yeah.
or
Ah, like the
something like
grind.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's even like, if we go back to what we were talking about at training the other day, I had said the word, do you remember?
Nah.
The grind.
Oh, the grind. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
where
Now I remember. Yeah.
I was like, this is all part of the grind, and it's kind of even reframing to I get to be on the grind. And we used to do that a lot in the social media. On my
On
what
the
was it?
grind. On the
On the
grind.
grind or
About to grind. I'm
whatever.
grinding hard this
Yeah, and
season.
now
Grind season.
now you look back and it's cringe, but
Yeah, it
it's
is.
actually, but there's some truth to it where you get to work hard. And I think thinking about it that way of, it's a privilege to get to work hard,
It is.
and that mindset kind of, with that mindset, you can flip almost anything.
Yeah.
And that goes into optimism, another tool, growth mindset, another tool.
Mm.
But having that base of gratitude and being grateful that you get to fill in the blank,
Yeah.
go to practice, go to the game, go to practice your foot skills, walk around a new city, or play with your friends, or skip school for this tournament. School's great, education's important,
Yeah.
but who didn't love when they're in school getting to prioritize soccer over school,
Amazing.
while your grades are super important,
Yeah.
and those will get you into the college, and they will get you help you with your post
Yeah.
soccer career. Who didn't love that,
Yeah.
when you're in
Big time.
school. So it's those little things that are seen as a privilege that you get to be grateful for. And I think for me, that really, really carried me through the past,
And that's
I
key.
don't know,
That's
10 some
crazy that you
years.
say that, because I think about it. I come from a complete different mindset, and
Yeah.
I could even think that there are viewers that are maybe watching this and they're like, man, all that mindful nonsense, all that positive like reframing, like all that like mental stuff. Man, I'm just gonna go and ball. Like I don't need that
Yeah.
stuff. That's weird. That's man, that stuff. That was me.
Yeah.
That was me. I was like, bro, I don't need that. Like, I don't need that stuff. But now looking back, I'm like, my goodness, if I would have had a sports psychologist, or like even the mental skills, or like a mentor or someone feeding into me these type of patterns and processes and like skills to problem solve the demands of the modern game, then I think I would have been even more successful. And so it's like you think it's not important and you think it's the little things that are the most important. It's the little things, these things that you're saying right now are like where the pros are actually made. Because again, I was completely opposite of that. I wasn't, I get to train. It was like, man, like I need to ball out because if I don't, I'm not gonna get the contract that I want to get. I wanna go to the board and ask for a raise. I want a raise, like or man, like I'm on the bench. I remember this one time I was on the under 15 national team, and I only played 20 minutes, and I was complaining. And one guy's like, "That's 20 minutes more than every other kid in the country at your age," and I was like, "That's a great perspective."
Perspective.
But I'm
Yeah.
mad. Like I should have played. This guy isn't better than me. Like I should play. And so that mindset, like, and then you become an adult. You become, you become a future wife, a future husband, a future dad, a future mom, a future. If you work in a company after soccer, you become a future something. And it's like that mindset goes with you everywhere. And it's like if you have good skills, great. If you don't, it's gonna hurt you. It's gonna hurt your career and it's gonna hurt you as a human. So for me, it's like it's so important to develop kids with that because again, it can really ruin. I remember there were times where I was in a magnificent city, like Instagrammable, like beautiful hotel. But if I didn't start that day, I was angry. It was just I didn't have a perspective. And then when I did get my 15, 20 minutes in the game, I maybe didn't play as good as I could have if I would have had a positive mindset. And that stuff builds up and it compounds. So it's so important to invest in your mindset to be level headed because, again, there's a lot of ups and downs, and your emotional state can't be connected to the ups and downs. It needs to be connected to something fundamental, something I would say grounded and pure. And again, I think something that I always take away from you is you have a pure love for the game and you carry that with you. And I think that's amazing because I would say I love the game of football, and I love it, but it's like I'm very fascinated and captivated by the end goal. But sometimes it's like, yeah, you can have that end goal mindset, but it has to be driven and rooted by the love of the game. And so I think we end these type of segments and these talks with you just got to love the game and you've got to prepare yourself, but the driving force is the love of the game. And like something that you've helped implement at Fall State that I always make sure to tell the kids is, hey, we're doing all of this not just not just for the end goal, but it's actually so that you can have more fun in the game. And so that's been a big changer for me where it's like now all the coaches, you've come and kind of brought that culture where it's like you're going to run these intervals so that in the game you can have so much fun in beating your man every single time to the point where you can laugh at him because you're just so fit. And so that's a perspective that you've brought, and I think that's a perspective that I think parents can learn from where it's we're working hard so that you can dominate, so that you can have fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a huge one. Yeah, just emphasizing the harder you work, yes, okay, the gratitude, that's a big one, but it's not to take away from the tenacity, the fierce competitor,
Yeah.
the gamesmanship, what makes you aggressive, what makes you a whole like an all-around footballer.
Yeah.
I think those are like two sides that when they mesh make kind of that whole footballer part of it where
They
you're
can
like
coexist.
yeah, and like you said, like adding that mindset is like you get to work really hard at
Yeah.
practice and then it's gonna be so fun, like you said, like we say,
Yeah.
at Fall State,
Yeah.
like it's gonna make the game that much more fun, and it's fun to go 1v1
Yeah.
and meg somebody
Yeah.
or embarrass
Yeah.
somebody, um so yeah, it's for me, it's all about that, and I'm glad that um now at Fall State we can
Bring that
bring that,
perspective.
yeah, bring that. I think it's honestly
It's
fun
yeah.
to help them cultivate their love for the game
Yeah.
and see how working hard can really even fuel their love for the game.
Super
So
important. No, like you said, and I'll end it with this. That's why I think it's very good for other coaches, parents to hear these conversations because they're at Fall State. All the coaches are having these convos after sessions. We stay after and we dialogue. And our motivation is to make sure that the players can have a to be better equipped for the realities of the amazing youth soccer landscape and pro world that they'll walk into. And so having someone like you on board is very important because it does add that level of perspective where I think before at Fall State we were really like super intense, and we still are super intense, but we're adding that missing component, which is, do you have the mental problem solving skills that are going to help you as a human first, and then in the next level when you go on to when you have to compete for NIL deals, when you have to compete for scholarships, when you have to compete for positions and raises, and are you going to be transferred this year for a bigger transfer fee so then you can negotiate a bigger salary. So we're preparing youth kids for that, and that's exciting. And I think that as two players that played pro, and we understand the realities of the next level, but we understand what it's like to grow up in their shoes, and we can relate to them because we know what it feels like. I'm sure you see a lot of these kids, and you can see even from their body language and from just being around them, you can see like I felt what they're feeling right now, and I know how to solve it because I saw it from a pro perspective, but I also remember being a kid. And so I think that's why it's super exciting what's happening at Fall State, and we're really happy to have you on board. And I
Thank
think
you.
we'll have more episodes like this, and hopefully we can get some of the more coaches in, and so we can have bigger dialogues into some of the more deeper topics that we talk about that I know
Oh yeah,
people would enjoy.
for sure. Thank you for having me, coach.
No, no worries. All right.